Hello YouTube, this is XOR Hacks. Today we will be doing Legacy, which is an easy box on HackTheBox and a Windows machine. It is vulnerable to two major exploits, the MS08067, which got famous because of Conflicker, which is a worm that was detected in the November of 2008 targeting Windows operating systems. And the second is MS17010, which is more commonly known as Eternal Blue and was developed by the US National Security Agency NSA, which was leaked by the shadow brokers in the April of 2017. Both the exploits will give us system authority shells on the machine, so there will be no need for privilege escalation. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's start with the basic nmap port scan. In SC for default scripts, SV for enumerate versions, ON for output, and here we have the name and the IP address. But as it takes a little while to run, I already ran it before recording. And in the output we can see that we find two ports open, 139 and 445, which are both SMB, and we find 3389, but that is closed. In the script scan we get some basic information like the NetBIOS name of the target is Legacy, which we already knew, and by OS discovery we can see that it is Windows 2000 and that it has authentication level user enabled, which is usually enabled by default but is never recommended. So usually, as it is an SMB box, we would run something like SMB map, but whenever I run SMB map, I get this. Essentially it means that there is no share has been mapped for SMB over here. So under this circumstance, we will use nmap to further scan for vulnerabilities on the target. So now these are nmap scripts. They all end with .nse, and you will basically find one for possibly every service. What we are looking for is SMB, and we find quite a few. We can see enumeration and even vulnerabilities. What we need is the vulnerability ones, and we can see we came up with a few. Now we need to run all of these. So what we will do is nmap script SMB vuln and star means everything with the prefix of SMB tag vuln would run on port. And for the port we can see that, as we saw in the nmap scan, there are two ports, 139 and 445. We will be targeting 445 as 139 is NetBIOS. So let's go back to it, 445 and the IP address. Oh yeah, and do not forget to add, oops. So when we run it on ZSH, for some reason the star is evaluated as a character, not as a wildcard. But when you run it on bash and map, I'll skip the PN right now. It does run. That is because bash evaluated this star as a wildcard, but ZSH did not. There's a very easy workaround for this, and that is just escape it, and it works. So now as the scan is done, we can see the results. We find MS08067 and MS17010, which is also known as Eternal Blue. Both are RCE, remote code execution, and in fact MS17010 has a risk factor high. We can search for both of these exploits on Searchsploit. Let's copy this and let's go here. We find a few, but none of these would work for our box because most of these are for much newer boxes, and we have Windows 2000, and we have a Windows Server 2000 to 2003, but this does not really work in our case. Usually what I would do when I find a vulnerability like this, I would copy it and go on Google and search for a GitHub link, and we find this. This is actually a well-known exploit, so you might find other files too and other people who have uploaded their exploits to GitHub, but this is the one I've used. So I can wget this. Let me make the screen a little easier to watch, and let me clear this. And so now that we have the exploit, let's analyze it. We can see that it is running Python 2 and it needs an packet. Let's just try running the, tell us what it needs. Python. So we need to install these two libraries. This is in packet. It is there by default, but I think in the latest version it's only supporting Python 3, so we need to install it, and PyCrypto. You will often find exploits where you need to install some library or a different package, sometimes even an obscure library altogether. So that you do not have version issues, I would recommend you use something like virtual env, which can help you make virtual environments. So Python, I've already made one. So you would make something like virtual env p user bin Python. The p will tell it which Python version we want. I need to specify 2.7 so that you don't really get a Python 3 virtual env, because that would defeat the purpose. Let me show an example. Let me try running it in Python 3. It gives me a syntax error. I do have mpacket, but it's giving me a syntax error. So we need Python 2. I've already installed these two. I will add the links in the description and the link to virtual env and how to use it. After you've installed it and created a virtual environment, you need to activate it. You need to source and name it venv in bin and activate. Now you can see the name of your virtual environment over here. It can be anything. It can be legacy also. I usually just keep it venv, but I should have kept it legacy, but I did not. So now let's run it again. Python, and see, and it does run. So now when we're running it, it's giving us a syntax, that is usage, the name of the file, the target IP, the OS, and port number. But now we need to do another step before we actually run the exploit. So let's go through the code again. The code has a section where it is running a shellcode. For that, we first need to generate a shellcode. The shellcode would have the lhost address, our IP address, and our port, which we will be setting up a listener on. So now we will use msf venom. We can copy the command from here, and now let's paste it over here. I need to see what's my IP address. It's 10.10.14.2. Let's go here. 14.2. Let's keep the L port at 443. Exit function thread. It means it won't crash the target. It won't crash it, and just open a new thread. And this is B. These are the bad characters. Means the shellcode that will be generated won't have any of these characters in it. You'll get to know more about this when you study for buffer overflow, which is also a very important part of the OSCP. The F tells which format it should print out in, and A is the architecture, and the platform is Windows. So now let's run it. I'll close this window, and now we have got the shellcode. We just need to copy it, and just to make it easier for myself, I'll open the exploit in Sublime Text. So let's go here and we will paste it. After we save it, we can go back to the terminal where we have our virtual environment enabled, and let's set up a listener. And now let's run it again. To see the syntax we needed, let's run it again without anything. So we need to supply the name of the file, the target IP, which is 10.10.10.4. So these are the targets that it needs, so according to which it will tailor its payload. And let's go with 6. It's Windows XP, Service Pack 3, English, and it is 6. And we go with port 445, and now we run it. And as we do, we get a shell on the machine. I do who am I, and I get nothing. That is because some older versions of Windows do not have who am I on it. So we will first search for whoami.exe. There it is. Let's copy it to our current location, and let's now run packet. Need the SMB server and user bin packet SMB server. We need to set a name for the share. Let's keep it legacy, and the path to the directory is the current directory where we have kept the file, so dot. We need sudo, and it works. So now to actually run the whoami executable, you can do / our own IP, our local machine IP, and again dash. Now we need to enter the name of the share, which was legacy, and whoami.exe, and it runs. We are system authority, and here we can see on our SMB server that we did get a connection from 10.10.10.4. Now let's just exit and close the server. And let's close the exploit. Now let's exploit the box with MS17010, which is also known as Eternal Blue, and the second exploit we found by running an nmap1 scan. We did search for it on SearchSpite, but the version we need to exploit is Windows 2000, and we couldn't find anything that old. So now let's look for it online. Here we go, MS17010 and GitHub, and we'll be using this particular repository but a forked modified version of it. So this is the one we're going to use, and the file that we need is send and execute.py. Let's first clone it locally, and we can see that we have the file that we needed. Now to actually run this exploit, we first need to actually use the version the environment that we created. For that, let's source it. Also because we need mpacket and Python 2, which we installed over here. So first let's just run it without anything. A lot of the scripts that we will find for exploits, well-written exploits at least, will have some kind of help menu, or at least give you a basic idea of what kind of syntax it would need. So we would need to supply the name of the file, the target IP address, and an executable file which we will just create. We don't need to concern ourselves with port and pipe name. So now to create the executable, we will be using msfnm and Windows, the lhost, I don't really know our lhost right now. So that is 10.10.14.14 and an L port, and we need to create an exit function. The format we need it in is exe, architecture being x64, and we need to tell the platform Windows, and the output will be rev4444.exe. Well, there seems to be an issue where I wrote 68, it needs to be 86. And now we have the file over here. So now let's go back to the first window and set up a listener. 4444 because that's the one I created the payload for, and now we can just run that exploit again, but this time with the proper name, proper information, and the syntax. Well, it is not 14, it is 4. And now let's press enter. As you can see, we get a shell back, but when we do who am I, we get nothing. Now to be able to do that, we need this binary, which is not on the older versions of Windows, so we can actually look for it on our Kali system. Locate whoami.exe. This is the one I'm using. So actually to run it, we can use impacket and set up an SMB server on our system. So let's do user in packet SMB server, and we need to name the share legacy, and dot symbolizes our current directory. I need to provide it sudo, and now it runs. So actually to be able to run it, I'll do $10.10.14.14 and the name of our share legacy and the file, and via system authority we can actually see that a connection was made from the machine legacy and was able to authenticate successfully. And now we have rooted the box or hacked the box. Thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe and share the video as much as possible. Thank you.